Looking back on the... Okay, so I'm not going to torture you with me. I bought this guitar in college, and last week I dusted it off for this thing. I put the strings on and tuned it up. I tried to relearn that song. My fingers are numb from just trying to relearn that song. If you know Garth Brooks, raise your hand and give me a yippee.
Yippee!
If you like Garth Brooks, raise your hand and give me a yeehaw.
Yeehaw!
A little bit less. Garth Brooks is the one who kind of kicked me in the butt and inspired me into getting into this what we have here is public speaking. Who has seen his Vegas show? Has anybody seen his Vegas show? He did it for about 3 years in Vegas, I believe. And they showed it between Thanksgiving and Christmas, probably about 6 years ago. It was just him and his guitar. There was no band. There was no backup singers. He didn't sing many songs completely. He didn't sing a whole lot of his songs. He was there with his guitar. He was in your face. He had his facial expressions and his eyes. I don't know if you've seen Garth Brooks' eyes, but when he's there, it's just captivating. He grabs you. And that helped me reflect back to when I was on stage in front of about 4,500 people in Austin, Texas. It was just a 3 to 5 minute testimonial that I was supposed to give. And the rush of preparing. The rush of getting on stage. And people laughed when they were supposed to laugh. And people oohed and awed at my story when they were supposed to ooh and awe. What power that was. I had the power and I loved it. And I got off the stage and my adrenaline was just pumping. And back then I thought, I want to do this more. That was the first time I'd been in front of that many people. And Garth Brooks reminded me, wow, how nice it is to have the people in your hands and just have that power. So I called a buddy of mine, Brad Barton. Does anybody know Brad Barton? He's a public speaker. He's a professional speaker out of Ogden. He does it for a living, and he makes a good living at it. I said, Brad, I still use this phone. I'm not I said, Brad, what do I have to do what you do? He says, Bart, well, there's this thing called the NSA, not the National Security Administration. I think you need to come to our event. It's the Christmas one. It's going to cost you a little more. They're going to feed you prime rib. And we have a speaker that's coming in that normally gets paid $25,000 a night. I'm like, wow, how much is this going to cost me? $50. Okay, I'm there. He introduced me to Thomas Cantrell. Said, you need to hook up with Thomas and have him be your speaking coach. So I hooked up with Thomas. Thomas is supposed to be here today, but I lost my program, but you might have saw his picture. You get someone a little bit better looking in me. He double booked a lot like the airlines do nowadays. And he asked me, Bart, just come and tell them what we did, how we started. So, kind of how we started is I called him because Brad said, call Thomas and see when he can get you in. I called Thomas and Thomas said, I don't really know if I want to work with you. You don't know if you want to work with me, so I'm going to give you your first 2 sessions for free. Come in and let's chat. Went to his house and we sat. I kind of felt it was like a psychiatrist. So I was on the couch and he was in his chair with his notebook. And he just started asking me about me. Mark, where do you come from? What do you know about? What do you do? And we came up with some stories. The body, acres of pig poop, acres of pig poop, Grand Theft Auto. And we just came up with these stories and we mined them. That's the theme of this conference, is mining your story. What's the point? What's the purpose? We weave them into a keynote. And what I like to talk about is monetizing your mindset, cashing in on your passions. That's where we set up my key phrase and what I was going to talk about. I was in Miami speaking to a network marketing company. And we had weaved this keynote through my stories. Several stories having the same point: extra income, monetizing your mindset, finding what you're passionate about. I'm going to give you the Toastmasters version, shorter version of that keynote, then we're going to talk a little bit about it. My wife is Japanese. Every year she goes back to her country to visit her family, stays for about a month, and she gets all her health checks done while she's there. She calls me from Nagoya. I'm not there to answer the phone. I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but I wasn't there. I called her back. And she informs me that the initial tests are cancer. She jokes about it and says, we're going to have to find you a new wife. On the outside, I'm calm, but on the inside, no. My brother died at age 53 from prostate cancer. We lost my sister at 62 from pancreatic cancer. I don't think there's anybody in here who hasn't been touched by cancer. I don't know what would be going through your mind, but my mind was racing. My first thought is, I lose my wife. Sadly, my second thought is, we can't afford this. Why do my thoughts go to money so quickly? Money isn't everything, unless you don't have any, or you don't have enough. I'm afraid we don't have enough for me to stop what I'm doing and be by her side to support her. 8 sleepless nights go by. I felt helpless. I felt inadequate. Thinking about, what are we going to do? The tests come back and it's negative for cancer. She just had to have a surgery to remove the tumor, and it was benign. We need to find opportunities, business opportunities that we're passionate about, and it's critically important that we develop them so that we have the resources, so that we have the ability for whatever happens when what happens happens, because we don't know what's going to happen or when. And it's easy to do in this day and age with the internet. It makes the world so small. If you just monetize your mindset, you can cash in on your passions. What do you want to do? What do you need to do? What are you doing already? Can you monetize it? About 9 years ago, I mean, my wife decided it was time to start working on the after picture. My before picture was good enough. I searched for everything out there. I tried this, I tried that. The comb, the dog comb, so he doesn't bite his tail, put that around my neck so that I couldn't eat. Nothing worked. It was about the 90-day challenge of me getting my butt to the gym. That just wasn't in my DNA. I had enough willpower, enough motivation to get there that one time, pay my money for 3 years, and then never go again. Until about 2 years ago, a friend called me. Her name's Beth. She's from California, kind of kind of in the hippie side of things, and she says, Bart, you need to try this 10-day celebrity transformation. It's a 10-day cleanse. Beth, I want to do a 10-day cleanse like I want a colonoscopy. I told that joke to someone a while back, and I said, well, at your age, you probably need both. About a year later, I gave in and I tried it. I lost 18 and a half pounds in 10 days. Wow. I took a break, I did another one, lost another 10 pounds. I did that 4 times, and in 2 months and 5 days, I lost 48 pounds. Wow. I've kept it off for almost 2 years now. The anniversary is actually next week. The point of the story is not that I lost weight, not what I did. The point of the story, whenever I started that, my mind was already thinking, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make money at it. Like Marie Osmond for Nutrisystem. And that's what I did. I turned that into a monthly income to me, about $200, $300 a month. I do hardly anything other than post my results. And it still comes in. I'm not particularly passionate about weight loss. It was something I needed to do. As a kid, I was passionate about music. Obviously not a band type of music because I didn't do a very good job there. But I liked stereos. I liked playing the records. Bought my first stereo at age 11. Little did I know that was an expense, not just for the stereo. I had to buy the tunes every month. At age 15, in my small podunk town in southern New Mexico, I decided, I'm going to have a dance. I rented the community center, hired an off-duty cop. Mom and Dad took money at the door. I spun records. Everybody had a good time. I created my own income off of something that I loved that was an expense. Find what you need to do, what you're gonna do anyway. Monetize your mindset. Now my dad, I grew up in a small farming community. We were pig farmers. But he wasn't just a pig farmer, he was a businessman. He actually owned part of the property that Diamondback Stadium is built on in Phoenix, Arizona. He made a killing on that. When he was in his 60s, he decided it was time to shut down the pig operation. Now our pig operation was pretty big. We had 2,000 sows. For those of you who don't know what a sow is, it's mama pig. Okay? We shipped 800 to 1,000 pigs a week, every week. That creates a lot of pig poop. Do you remember, or have you heard the story of Acres of Diamonds? Ali Hafed, he sells his farm, goes in search of diamonds. He dies poor, alone, and in a foreign land, and he never found his diamonds. But that farmer that bought his farm found diamonds. Literally acres of diamonds in what was Ali Hafed's backyard.
Oh my goodness.
Now my family story is, like I mentioned earlier, acres of pig poop. So that acres of pig poop that we had, we diverted it into 3 man-made ponds. And one year we would send it this direction, and then this direction, and then this direction. So we had more poop and more poop and more poop for years. We had the farm in operation for over 30 years. At 81, Dad passed away. He never found his next acres of diamonds that he was looking for after he shut down the pig operation. About 2 years later, we sold the farm for $235,000. That was proper price for the farm at that time. About 6 months after that, the new owners were leveling those ponds that had been sitting for a long time, and they were dry on top. That heavy grader broke through the crust and sunk up to his belly in this black muck. They called in environmental experts to see if it was okay, if it was safe. That company that came to check it out, right there on the spot, offered them $2,000 a ton.
My
There was over 500 tons of stuff there. The farm that we sold for $235,000 is now worth over $1 million. 500 tons of smelly pig poop was literally acres of diamonds right under my dad's nose. So don't overlook what's in your backyard. What is it? What could it be? Monetize your mindset. Cash in on your passions. You need to develop those multiple streams of income, those extra streams of income, so that you have the resources for what happens when what happens happens. So in a nut, that was the keynote that we put together from my story, or the stories that we had. And obviously for the keynote, it was longer. I added more stories. For this, I pulled stories out to make it shorter. When you're making your story, how does it work? We had the story slam last night. Who participated? Frank did. Okay, so we have some participants here. I need a volunteer. We need a few volunteers. Let's start with one and see how we go from there. I need a volunteer, someone who has a story. Doesn't need to be a speech. I just want to hear a story. We're going to kind of recreate what me and Thomas did without the sofa and the chair and the notepad. Who has a story? Anyone?
We all have stories.
Come on up, if you're willing. Okay, stories that are willing to share. Take 1 to 5 minutes and just tell us your story.
I grew up in Delta, Utah. Actually, not actually in Delta, because Delta's a city and there are a lot of small towns outside of Delta. I grew up in Hinckley, Utah. My dad was a foreman at a dairy. As a matter of fact, there were quite a number of dairies when I was growing up. And so it was a common thing. The whole area there was agricultural. So if you didn't have a dairy, you were probably raising hay, raising beef, possibly pigs. That's the way things were in the area where I grew up. And so this is, I'm in 6th grade, and my teacher says, hey, we're having our parents come in and talk about their careers. And when can your dad come in? Well, my dad didn't own the dairy. He was just a foreman. And the other kids, well, their dads owned dairies. Their dads owned their businesses. And I was like, oh, this isn't gonna go well. And so I waited for my dad to come home. My dad comes home late at night because he worked 16-hour days. And I mentioned to him, Dad, we're having a career day, and I know you're busy, but I mean, if you can make it or something, that'd be great. And so he says, well, I'll get back to you on that. And I thought, you know, he's gonna be too busy, this is gonna be okay. And so I forgot about it. And the teacher had gotten a hold of my dad, and they'd got things set up. And so I come walking in from recess, and the teacher says, Bill, says, your dad's here, and I want you to introduce him as we go back into class. And I thought, oh no, this is terrible. And I looked over, and I saw my dad, and he was dressed up in his military uniform. My dad was a member of the Utah National Guard. He was an officer. As a matter of fact, shortly after that, he retired at the rank of lieutenant colonel. And he would spend time going different places, and a lot of it was just in Utah, but at the end there, he started going to Korea to Japan and to Germany. And in this occasion, he had come back from Germany not too long ago. Now, in a small town like Delta, there's not very many people that have been outside the state, really, let alone outside of the country. And so he'd recently been out of the States. And so I introduced my dad, and I was pretty darn proud, but I didn't do him justice just because I wasn't prepared for this. And he told a little bit about what he did. He talked about some of the experiences, and the kids were really good. They really thought that was cool, that he had been to Germany, and he talked a little bit about the food and stuff there. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I remember my dad says, he still says it today, he says he'd served the mission for the LDS Church in England. And he says, my worst meal in Germany was better than my best meal in England. Really loved that food. So that was an opportunity for me to realize how much I really did respect my father. And it opened up my eyes. Sometimes I don't really see things the way they are. Sometimes I just see things that are common, that we see every day without seeing the true measure. I was so proud of my father that day. And I'm so glad that I had that opportunity, that we had that opportunity.
Good story.
What would your purpose be for that story? And I heard it there at the last. What did you realize?
It's I want to say value, but it's not value. It's
Would it be pride?
well, it was the pride that I had, but it was more about my father. It was pride I had in my father, and I guess it was kind of missing in the beginning. So I did find the pride that I had in my father, but just his value, his just something I hadn't. And he was gone one weekend every month. I mean, it could have chimed in at any time and said, "Hey, your dad's also in the National Guard," but it never did. So it was something that I had overlooked.
And you said that at the end. You said you overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
And so to create that into a speech, what would your open be? Don't overlook.
Yeah,
What,
something about.
What do you have?
what have you overlooked?
Yes.
What have you overlooked in
Exactly.
your life?
Or have you ever overlooked something that was really important, or overlooked someone who was really important?
What I got was the deeper meaning of what your father brought and your relationship. It was meaning to me more than value, what your dad meant to you.
Bart's story about the diamonds in the farmer's field, starting with a story like that and then bring your story into it, would be an interesting way to handle that, because those diamonds were right there, right underneath your feet, and was your dad, that relationship.
I kind of took away you kind of had your way of measuring him, like by society standards up front, like it was all about the fact that you owned this or that, but my dad didn't own that. He was working 16 hours a day, but he was a foreman, not a owner. And that maybe we hold that up as being the measurement, but really the true measure of your father was these other dimensions that you hadn't really explored.
So the theme is coming back to overlooking. What have you overlooked?
Right.
And so it'd be fellow Toastmasters. Are you overlooking important stuff in your life, or whatever you get as it? So fellow Toastmasters, what have you overlooked? You tell your story. Don't overlook these special moments in your life, fellow Toastmasters. You have a Toastmaster speech. So you're minding your speech just from your story, minding your stories to turn it into a speech, and then you probably have other stories that relate to that. You put them in, it's a longer speech, in your keynote. It's a lot of what me and Thomas did. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else?
I just want to make a comment that while the background information was interesting about Delta, I think you could have condensed that quite a bit.
Right. Yep. Anybody else wants to come up and share? Come on up. Tell us your story.
Have you ever had that moment when you realize you're not the person you thought you were? My little children, I was fortunate enough to stay home while they were in their younger grades, and I would walk them to school, especially kindergarten. What a wonderful time to walk your kid to school. So I was walking home from school, dropping off my little boy one day, and I walked by this house that I've walked by 1,000 times. And in this house, I know the renters that are renting the house, but there was a strange man out front and he was mowing the lawn. And so I said, "Oh, are you the owner?" And he said, "No, I'm just the lawn guy." And then it occurred to me that had he been Hispanic, I never would have asked him that question. And what's really funny about that is I was a real estate agent who often sold to Hispanic people in Idaho Falls. So I don't get why, but I do get that it's important. And when people tell you that that there's an underlying prejudice that you always say, "No, not me. No, I treat everybody exactly the same." If I treated everybody exactly the same, I would have asked that same question to anyone who was mowing that lawn.
Okay, so what would be your open?
Well, the mea culpa. I think that this is one of those things where you find out something about yourself that you didn't know before.
Okay, so fellow Toastmasters. Now what? What are we gonna say? What would we say for that? What do you think? What are some thoughts there? How would we open that?
I'm not sure how I would open it, but what I really heard her saying was the walking and the profiling. And so I'm trying to write that out, but.
Well,
Anyone-
that's an
can anyone
interesting
help?
thought on that.
Maybe start it with that question, and do you profile? No, you don't think you do? Well, let me tell you this story.
Well, that's really good, because I never thought of it as profiling until just now when you said that. It's awesome.
Or inherent bias, I think is the other
Initial
term.
bias.
So, initial bias, yeah.
Anyone else have any ideas? Or we could take that story.
I don't know how to end it with, I think I'm great.
Okay, so let's get to the end. Well, you just turn around what your open is. So let's take my Acres of Diamond story. It's a popular story that's out there. Most people know it. And I talk about the acres. So are you overlooking what's right in your backyard? Tell the racial, or not the racial. I tell the Acres of Diamond story. What's in your backyard?
Who's your neighbor?
I tell the acres
Oh, I like
of
that.
pig poop, acres of pig poop story. And then I close with, don't overlook what's in your backyard. So you just change whatever your beginning is, and you switch that into a close. Could add a few more words, take out a few more words. So what was your open? What do you think your open would be?
My open was, have you ever had that moment where you found out you weren't who you thought you were?
Let's make it a little more biting. You ever had that moment when you realized you were a racist?
Whoa!
Yeah.
But that's,
It's-
catches.
And it catches you. It's true.
I think you can temper that a little bit so she doesn't fall over and say, do you ever realize that you behave as a rapist? Because if you say you are a rapist, that defines you as a person. Racist.
Racist.
Racist. So it's C, P, same
Guys,
thing.
guys.
But if you talk about the behavior instead of character, I think people are more willing to accept that and assign it to themselves and act with it.
What defines a racist? Is it his behavior? That's perfect. What defines a racist? Is it their behavior? Is it something they said? And then go into it.
Or
Yeah,
something you
that's-
thought.
Yes.
I would, instead of saying they, I would probably say you, make it hit home.
Could would it be off of what the gentleman behind me said? Are you a racist?
Do you act like a racist?
I was just gonna say, have you ever had that moment when you realized you were a racist? So you're doing the alliteration, the two
So-
R's.
Fellow Toastmasters, and then read your fellow Toastmasters.
Have you ever had that moment when you realized you were a racist?
And you tell your story.
And the thing is that I'm not. However, that makes me very much look over what I portray to the world and even what I think to myself.
And so you would take that you just said and form it into a close, and then fellow Toastmasters or Madam Toastmaster or whatever.
It's more, seems like it's more of a stereotype than racism.
Yeah, I think so.
Because if he was a Hispanic and wearing a gold watch or something like that, you probably wouldn't suspect that he was the
Yeah,
blonde
and the
guy.
fact that I was from Southern California where there's a large number of blonde guys who happen to be Hispanic.
They're all Asian.
That was back in the day.
They're not anymore.
Why don't you just open with the question of, I'm gonna ask you a tough question now. Are you a racist?
I like it.
And then just lead into
That's
that.
good. I like the lead-in of the, I'm gonna ask you that question, because I don't want them to feel hurt.
I'm gonna put the elephant in the
But it
room.
makes them question, and I think that's the important thing, because you want them to start using their brains and finding solutions. What makes me not a racist, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Is it something you do or is it something you think?
And what's your call to action at the end? What do
My
you
call to action is start rethinking who your neighbors are and what they look like. And start thinking about your neighbors as looking like other people. Right now in the United States, there's still an issue about what we used to call, oh man, I can't remember the term for real estate, but I would look it up for the speech.
Demographics?
Well, no, it's a mean name, and it means that you're purposefully bringing white people to white neighborhoods and black people to black.
Profiling?
It's
Gentrification?
before that, but yes, it's that same line, but it's a specific real estate. Any real estate agent would know and so start picturing your neighbors as black, the same person, the same attitudes, the same personality. Can you do it? Because that's what the world is.
She had a really good, in Who's Your Neighbor as the title. I like that.
Yeah.
You could do a lot around that, and you know, am I my brother's keeper? You could take it in so many directions, especially like what you were saying in building a keynote. You can use these different stories to build a bigger keynote depending on who your audience is.
And I think that's important to your audience. So in the same keynote, I did it I volunteer for, thank you. I volunteer for a drug rehab center in Frank too. We volunteer for a drug rehab center, and I talked about me and how I graduated in accounting, and the joke was that I don't even do my own taxes. I paid it.
Right.
It killed with the older generation. At this younger generation in the drug rehab, they're like, it was crickets.
What are taxes?
Exactly, what are taxes? Anyone else? We have time for a few more, so we need a couple at least. If you don't volunteer, it's just me. Okay, I'm gonna throw one out to you that I have yet to find a purpose for, or a point. A good point, I mean, other than, you know, so I'm gonna throw it out to you. I took the first commercial bungee jump to Japan back in the 90s. I'm a big gringo. In Japan we call them a gaijin. And I'm throwing these little Japanese people off. And our system was about a 70, 80 foot tower. Had an air mat, like a stuntman air mat down at the bottom just in case the cord breaks, so you're not supposed to ride. I'll get to the air mat later. The harness that we would hook you to had an upper and a lower harness, and we would connect the bungee cord at the center. It had this pad, it's probably 4 foot long, big yellow round pad that went around the cord, and its job was to keep the cord from wrapping around your neck when you're bouncing. Okay.
Important. That's good.
It is important. The scared people would grab that, and my official title was the Jump Master. I would pull them to the edge of the tower. And I would get them there and say, "Are you ready?" In Japanese, of course, not in English. I'd say, "Are you ready?" And they'd say, "Uh-huh." And I would say, "Seguro?" And they'd go, "Uh-huh." Who knows what seguro means?
Are you ready?
In
Spanish.
Spanish. I did that for 2 years. No one said anything except, The slow times at the top of this tower, I'd sit up there alone, I'd be reading a book, waiting for the next customer. There was this particular day that was particularly slow. When you're sitting up there, a brilliant mind wonders. Technically, you could jump from the top of this tower without a cord, hit that mat at the bottom, and be okay. It's a stuntman's mat, you know, it's the ones that are like 6 feet high, and when you hit it, the air blows out. You know what I'm talking about? I stand up at the edge, and I think, no, I can't do that. But my mind's still going. If I jump with a cord and let the bouncing stop, I'm about 3/4 of the way up. Unhook from there and fall, I can handle that. I know I can do that. So I jump with the cord, with help from the other staff that aren't supposed to be doing what we're doing. I quit bouncing, but I couldn't unhook the carabiner that had me hooked to the harness. So I gave up, went down, come back up. I'm still sitting there. That brilliant mind is still turning. Well, the thing that hooks you here to the 2 harnesses is a loop. I could put another loop on. I have handles. I could just hang on, jump, just hanging on, quit bouncing, and let go. Brilliant, right?
This was after your weight loss program, right?
Yeah.
I was skinny back then, so I kind of did fat to fit. It's kind of what I tried to do. I'm still not that fit, but anyway. I don't even know if I can hang on. I just think I can. I'm up the edge. Now in my head I'm going, "Are you ready?" Seguro? I don't care what I'm speaking. I jump. Obviously, since I'm here, it was okay. But my brilliant mind did not think far enough. I am technically hanging at the end of a big rubber band. What's gonna happen when I let go? It's gonna go wing. There are people in the park, by the way. There's customers in the park. I let go. I hit that mat. That cord has this big spool at the end of it. It hits the tower. Bang! 30, 40 people come running. What happened? Wow, nothing to see here. Everything's okay. That's my story. I end it with, if I ever have to tell that story, the end is, stupid is as stupid does, or don't let a brilliant mind get you in trouble. So help me out. What's my purpose?
Well, I came up with a title, Brilliant or Bozo?
My first thought, right from the beginning of the story, is a thought that I have often in these kinds of situations. Never would have been a girl. Never would have been a woman doing that. Never would have.
So your point is?
Boys do a lot of things.
Well, it might have been a girl, but it wouldn't have been a mother.
It's pretty much 5th grade.
Yeah.
I was thinking Craig Valentine.
I was in my late 20s.
Again, the mentality, the thought process.
Think with the end in mind. I don't know.
With the end in mind?
It's
Yes.
There are worse ways to get fired.
They love me. They put fire in me.
Japanese
No, but you
thunder.
don't have to tell the truth.
That's true.
That's true.
So,
How to generate business.
How to generate this.
for attention.
That's another like.
I use an example when I'm training, and it's the rearview mirror. Like, the more experience you have, the further you can see in your rearview mirror, the further you can see down the road. You have a
Because
much different perspective after having done it.
I think about that now. What I just told you, I think about it now. Man, how stupid was I? My dad would have been proud. I like that. I like that. You know, perspective
Actually,
will
that's
be
a
there.
really good way of extending it. If you've got children, and the mind before having children and the mind after having children, and what you would think of, you know, because there is a huge change. And actually, the point I'm thinking is, when you go to talk to young people, a lot of young people rush into marriage. And both my sons are in college, and tons of their friends are getting married. And they're not thinking it through, because they don't even have an income, and once you get married, 6 months later you can have a baby. And so, you know, that would be a really good, I can prove that boys are dumb.
Well, what she said in that kernel is think it through. That would be a good point, like she says, if you were talking to your drug kids or whatever, think it through.
And also what I got from it was, you always hear how much smarter your parents become as you get older.
Yes.
I mean, something along that lines. Same with, so I like to speak about monetize your mindset. I can throw that in there and how you need to think it through.
Or hindsight is 20/20.
Here and then here.
I'm thinking of stupid things my husband has done and he shared with me, but never with his mother. So things you would never tell your mother. I will give you an example.
And it's probably true, because I don't know if my mom or dad know
Yeah,
I did
right.
that.
And you hope it never gets back to her.
I think that you actually thought it through, though. I think that you really thought about it a while, you contemplated it, you even did a trial run, you know, so I think that the message.
So we're going along the line of premeditated murder?
Premeditated
suicide. Premeditated suicide. But so I think that to say, well, you didn't really think, you did think it through, but sometimes even if you have thought things through, there can be other consequences, and your what if that cord had reached up and hit somebody or something like that, like, so really think it through.
Well, it's
Yeah.
next steps. You thought it through to the point of hitting the mat,
Right.
not what else happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This would maybe just twist that just a little bit, and just call that my friend curiosity. And talk about
Gosh,
some
you
of
guys
the
have
places
given
that
me a
you've
lot to think about. I
gone.
need to dissect this a little more and come up with more on that story. Yes, sir.
I think there's a strong connection to what you said earlier about figuring out what it is you really wanna do and going ahead and doing it. Many of us are afraid to do that, because we're not sure what the consequences will be. But you showed, there was analysis you had done, you had experienced the jumping, you'd watched people jump, you understood how much tension was there when you got to the bottom of that rubber band. So you felt that it wouldn't rip your fingers out of their sockets, and you would be okay hanging on. And by doing it, you relieved that curiosity that was balled up in your head and preventing you from thinking further. And you said, now I can do that, I can go do something else that scares everybody else. So you raised your level of self-confidence beyond what the hecklers around you were saying was impossible.
No, they knew what was gonna happen, they just weren't gonna say it.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more.
Can I just ask you a question?
You can.
If you were introducing bungee jumping to Japan, did you know AJ Hackett?
I did not. I know of AJ Hackett. So I was for a company here in Utah that's up in Logan. I went to school at Utah State. And it's a long story. Some of you heard it last night, but
That's fine.
I was, yeah, so
I was
it was
just gonna-
it was Sports Tower up in Logan that I worked for.
I was just going to ask you, because he was the guy that created bungee jumping, I was going to ask you what his comment would be.
Stupid is.
It probably, I don't know. I don't know him, so I don't know him personally. But I know most people in the bungee, I know the Sports Tower company, if they knew I did that, they wouldn't have appreciated it. Anybody else? Does anybody want to come on up? Frank, come on up.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Back to all my Craig Valentine memorizations. How many of you have always done the best you could possibly do? When you were given a task, the last speech that you were asked to give to your Toastmaster Club, how much did you give all that you could possibly give? Everything, your soul and your spirit and your intellect, everything that you have, you put into that project. How many of us say it's good enough? It's okay. Mediocrity doesn't rule. The time was the closing of the Vietnam War. How many of you remember the Vietnam War? Just a few of us. At the end of that war, Henry Kissinger was to give a speech in Paris to the nations that were in combat of how the United States was going to close that war. Now, Henry Kissinger was a very bright, intelligent man, but he was a lousy speaker. And the State Department, in all of their wisdom, decided that he was not to write that speech, he would only present that speech. So they needed a young look at it. So they chose the star of the Columbia, I believe it was the international relations class. His name was Charles. Charles was a young man full of himself. And they said, Charles, here's what we have to do. This speech has to be ready for Dr. Kissinger to present in Paris in 3 weeks. You need to put that presentation together for Dr. Kissinger. Charles says, no problem, that is nothing, it's a piece of cake. He goes to his room, sits down, he writes it out, he says, I don't know why they're making such a big deal out of this. He spends probably a day and a half, puts the speech together, and he's to present that to the State Department that next Monday. He walks into Dr. Kissinger's office, and there's the gatekeeper, Trixie. Got the hair piled up like this, chomping her gum. She's like a chihuahua on steroids. What do you want? Well, I'm here to present this speech for Dr. Kissinger to give in Paris. Give it to me, we'll call you back. Wednesday, Charles gets a call. You need to come back and rewrite this speech. We want it by the next Monday. Charles said, what the heck? I put a lot of effort into that. I must have worked on that a day and a half. Charles goes to the State Department, he picks it up, and he says, you know what? I think I better spend a little more time on this. So what does he do? He makes a few phone calls, he does some research about the Vietnam War, which he knew nothing about. And by that next Monday, he returned the speech to Trixie. Trixie looks at it and says, we'll call you when we're ready. What does he get? Gets another phone call. This speech is unacceptable. You need to come back and put some effort into this. This speech has to be ready by next Friday for Dr. Kissinger to review. Charles goes, oh my God, I put so much time and effort into this. All right, this time he goes to the Library of Congress and he works and he works. He's working on this day and night. He has put every fiber of effort that he has into this very important speech. This could be presented in Paris by Dr. Kissinger. Goes back to the State Department. There's Trixie. He starts to hand it to her and he says, I need to see Dr. Kissinger myself. I've done everything I can on this speech, and you keep giving it back to me. Trixie says, I'll see if he can see you right now. Charles is waiting. Trixie comes out. Dr. Kissinger will see you now. Charles walks into Dr. Kissinger's office. You can imagine the oak paneling on the walls, the dark green curtains on the windows. In the back, he sees the great man, this massive desk. You can smell the pipe smoke. Dr. Kissinger's in the back. He walks up. He says, sir, this is your speech for the Paris Peace Conference. I have presented this thing 3 times, and you've rejected it twice. I've done everything I possibly can. Dr. Kissinger puts his gloves on, picks it up. Young man, are you sure this is the best that you can possibly do on this speech? Sir, it's all I've got. I've given everything I have. Dr. Kissinger said, that's the best you can do. This time, I'll read it. Moral of the story is, did Charles really put everything he possibly had into that speech? The first time? No. The second time? No. The third time he put everything he possibly had into that speech. What do we do the next time we're given a task in our Toastmasters Club? The next time our spouse asks us to do something special for them? The next time in our job, our profession, our next speech, are we Charles the first time, or are we Charles the last time? Making a difference in what we do. Give it more than 100%.
Your point.
My point to the audience is to start thinking, do I really give 100% what I do? And I'll challenge anybody in this room, myself included, many times we don't give it. Matter of fact, we don't know we even have it. We give what we got. And mediocrity is the devil of excellence.
Do we have any other points that could be made from the story? Is there
I
anything?
like the conflict immediately. It was like, oh, I wonder what's gonna happen.
Any other ideas from
I
that?
think you nailed Dixie.
It's Trixie, not Dixie.
Oh, Trixie, whatever.
Trixie, Dixie,
Whatever. Yeah.
Flossie, you can get her a lot, but could you see her?
I definitely could.
Got the hairdo,
The
and the pencil stuff
hairdo,
in it.
you had the
The gum.
face.
She's
you
a
had the
little
gum.
gatekeeper.
Yeah, what she said.
Thanks, Ray. What are the 3 reasons we give speeches? What are the 3 speeches? Does anybody know? Here in Toastmasters. It's out there, it's published somewhere.
Entertain,
Entertain,
Inform.
inform,
Inspire.
inspire. Let's go back to Garth Brooks. He's a singer. It was a concert. It was supposed to be a concert that I was watching. What was he doing? He's there to entertain. His performance was all about music through his eyes from as he was growing up. He hit the 60s. And how in the 60s, they didn't know the words. It was just na 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 na. Nobody knew the words. Then he hit the 70s. It was just music through his perspective. So it was also to inform. And then what did he do to me? He inspired me to call Brad. That's what we're here to do with our stories. One of the things Thomas told me on the phone before I came up here yesterday, he says, close with this. Every day of your life, there's stories that you should be writing down. Or with our devices we have nowadays, you don't need to write it down. Speak into it. Tell your story, then figure out what the purpose is. I love my bungee jump story. Even though it makes me look stupid, I love it. But I hadn't really figured out the moral of the story other than Bart looking stupid. And that's what we're here to do, is mind your story, weave them into your message. I've already thought of a couple ways with that same story that I can weave into monetizing your mindset with the hindsight is 20/20 perspective. Get that in front of you. I hope you guys got something out of this today. I appreciated your participation in especially on my bungee jump story. I have stuff to go back and think about. Thank you. We're on break.